Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone in the franchise world. My name is Paul Segreto, and this is Franchise Today, broadcasting live from sunny Houston, Texas, as we just ended Franchise Expo South at NRG Center. It was a great event, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Stan Friedman from the lovely city of Atlanta. Stan,
where the sun is shining, Paul, but it's 45. It's not quite as warm and nice as you got down there in beautiful southwestern U.S. and Houston.
Well, I mention it because we know we have a whole bunch of colleagues and franchise professionals and friends and suppliers and everybody converging on the Lone Star State again this weekend for the 56th annual franchise convention by the International Franchise Association. It's going to be a phenomenal event.
As always, looking forward to it. It's my, along with many people, my favorite big event of the year. It's like homecoming. I just wish that this year MFV and IFA might have figured out how to get those two rolled one into the other without having to do the double round trips. But hey, I'd rather see everybody twice than not see anybody at all. So it's all good, Paul.
That's true. So last week we had as our guest CEO and president of the International Franchise Association, Robert Crescente, and of course it was a fantastic interview, and I think we actually have some press on that, Stan. So let us know what you found.
Well, I just discovered yesterday's IFA Smart Brief actually promoted the fact that Robert was our guest, and very kind of the IFA to. I mean, it's one thing to retweet something, right? But I think to get above the fold on the Insider with a link back to the program is about as nice as it gets for some good PR, and happy that he did that. My apologies to Mr. Crescente for missing half the podcast as my plane was rolling up to the gate at Franchise Expo South. But that's a testament to this time of year, Paul. I call it silly season, where we've got all these trips that are hugging up to each other, and you can all do all that you can to just try to keep your calendar straight and be where you need to be when you need to be there. So I missed the beginning of the podcast, but hard as I tried, couldn't talk Delta into leaving a half hour earlier.
Well, I just had vision of you running from the gate, kind of like OJ back in the day of the Hertz commercial, leaping over luggage in order to get to the spot.
Yeah, I think I'd rather leave the picture of that in my mind's eye to OJ instead of trying to replicate that with me.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we also have some great guests coming on in the future weeks. Anthony Owen, the CEO and founder of Minolta, will be on, and we'll be talking about social media in the franchise space. It should be quite interesting. And then the following week, we have Dr. John Hayes, who will be our guest live from the Middle East, and I'm really looking forward to that. And Stan, I know you actually stepped into Dr. Hayes' shoes at the Franchise Expo South. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I don't know that I can ever fit into Dr. Hayes' shoes. John Hayes has been around a long, long time doing what the professor does, and does so well in teaching those that he has, those who have the pleasure and the good fortune to be his students. He teaches the A to Z's of buying a franchise for MFV Expos in New York at the IFE each year, and I believe he actually did these programs around the country as well, but given that he's across the pond more than he's on stateside anymore, MFV invited me to teach that class at Franchise Expo South, and then again upcoming in Denver at the new home of the West Coast Expo later this year. And I had the good fortune of having Rebecca Monet from Zoracle join me for the program, and we did a bit of a tag team, had about 85 or 90 people in the room, and it was a ton of fun. I mean, this year to me, the expo seemed to have a good-sized crowd. I think there were 200-plus franchisors, and while the floor of the show wasn't a tsunami, there was steady traffic from front to back. And most of the franchisors I talked with said that this is the kind of pace they like, where you've got steady traffic, but you've got the ability to have some meaningful conversations with some folks as well. And this year, more time for me was spent upstairs with Steve Gross in the speakers lounge than downstairs on the floor of the show, keeping appointments with franchisors and of course, again, delivering the program. Kind of you to put me in that category of filling John Hayes' shoes. I just would hope, Paul, that I did half as well for those who listen to Rebecca and me as John would have done if he were there doing it himself. Thanks, though.
I'm certain you delivered well. I'm certain, and it was a good event, and there was a steady flow of traffic. I know, having been on the trade show floor with 3 brands under our management, I was running around ragged in circles. We had a steady flow of people that I think were genuinely interested in looking at brands and not doing a lot of tire kicking. And of course, the weather was great. The Houston economy is kind of a little bit rocky right now, just from an uncertainty standpoint, with so many energy companies laying off thousands. So we saw some of those people there. And then, of course, we were sandwiched right between the RV show and the home and garden show. So all in all, it was a great event. And for those that don't know it, next year, Franchise Expo South will be in Dallas, Texas. The Super Bowl will be here in Houston, so not enough room here. But I'm looking forward to Dallas, just like I'm looking forward to Denver, Stan.
I think it's a pretty good idea that they mix it up a little bit. And when you've got cities like Dallas and like Denver that are iconic cities for franchise HQs, it makes nothing but sense to bring the show into those marketplaces that have such a preponderance of franchisor, both Z's and Zors and home offices as well. Denver should be fun. It's going to be early enough into the fall that weather ought not be any kind of a factor, although it's Colorado, so you never really know. But I think it's a good idea. I'm looking forward to both Denver and Dallas for a change of pace, and we'll see what it brings in terms of new people to the show that have not attended before and those that can continue to just follow the program wherever it is. I mean, we've done L.A., Anaheim, and now Denver, and we've done Miami, Houston, and here comes Dallas. So I think it keeps it fresh, Paul. I think it's probably a really good idea.
I think so. Just don't want to see us going to Minneapolis in January. It's not where I'd want to be in January.
I don't even think Brian Schnell wants to see Minneapolis in January.
Well, you know,
and he lives there, right? So.
Yeah, I know.
But Paul, one last note on the front of the house. ADP released some figures yesterday that say that despite what's going on in Houston and the economy there because of oil, franchising added 20,000 jobs in the month of January. So we are continuing to see a robust environment for the franchise community, despite all the noise of litigation and legislation. Do you remember Herman Cain when he talked years ago at the Franchise Update Conference? Herman Cain said that the Asians are coming to get us. And everybody looked at him like, what? He said, yeah, the Asians, they're coming to get us. Legislation, and that legislation is coming to get us. And he rattled off about 4 or 5 words that end in Asian that are all about government. So, legislation and information. Yeah. But I think that despite it all, Paul, when you can see 20,000 jobs added in January, you can say what you want. Franchising's alive and well.
Yep, alive and well. And, as our guest Jerry Darnell has said, success can be defined in a multitude of ways. But in franchising, success is about being the right kind of person who makes the right kinds of decisions that help those in their sphere of influence become the right kind of people. And with that, I would like to introduce and welcome to the show Mr. Jerry Darnell. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's my pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, the mayor of franchising, as he's often referred to as being.
Yep.
Who coined that phrase, Jerry? Do you know?
I'm trying to remember. It was done at a MFV event probably nearly 8 years ago.
I mean, I wouldn't have stopped with mayor. I would have gone to governor or president or, you know, the king of franchising or something. But
you know
I'm
what?
okay with mayor. Mayor's okay, but
I've been called mayor, and I just want to be Jerry. How's that? I like to run under the radar.
Well, Stan, as you were saying, John Hayes as the professor of franchising, I was thinking of, Jerry is the mayor of franchising. Of course, our show title today is the mayor of franchising is in the house, and I'm certainly honored to have Jerry on the show, not only for all that he's done in franchising, but I really can't think of one person that's been a bigger proponent of franchise today for the past 7 years than Jerry Darnell. I mean, both from recommending people to be on the show, promoting it online. Jerry, I thank you.
That's what we're all about, buddy. We're believing in the same thing.
So the one thing, Jerry, you've got going that I don't, and I wish I did, but I'm in franchising almost as long as you, but not quite. And I have a memory, but nowhere near like yours. And I think, Paul, you wrote it up in the show blurb about Jerry. For somebody who's been at this business for as long as you have, it absolutely blows me away, Jerry, how you can harken back to conversations that happened 25 and 30 years ago and not just remember the conversation, but remember where it took place, who was there, what color tie they were wearing. If they told you what they ate for breakfast that day, you'd remember that too, wouldn't you?
Probably would. And actually, the reason I'm able to do that, because I have great friends, when I talk to them, they just pull triggers that make me go back, like you, like Paul, many of them.
Well, it mind boggles me how much clarity. I mean, when we talk frequently, but with clarity, you remember situations down to the finite details, and you go back, Jerry, with so many iconic people, and you are more than anything to me. They can call you the mayor or the governor or the chairman, but I call you the bridge builder, because what you do more than anything is connect people. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that if I were to say what's one thing you're known for, it would be that, and anybody who's met you along the way knows that. But I would love for you to do for me and for Paul and for the audience is go back to how you found your way into franchising and where did it all begin for you?
Purely by accident. I was a certified financial planner. I built one of the largest financial planning companies in the U.S., had over 600 agents working out of a company called American Bankers Group out of Miami, Florida. And then Jack Nicholas and another mentor of mine, Jack Walsh, they decided they were going to franchise financial planning centers. And all of a sudden, they had nobody that knew anything about franchising, including me. And so I got assigned to go out and took some of my mentors, and I will give it credit due. In franchising, I created the first Discovery Day on a trade floor back there with Bill Rosenberg, Fred DeLuca, David McKinnon. And all I did was took what I learned in the financial planning, growing it, and applied it to it. And we wound up doing financial planning centers all over the world, including CUNA Mutual, U.S. League of Savings and Loan, and opened in 9 countries. So it was purely by accident.
So franchising back in what year would that have been, like in the 80s? Early 80s?
Late 70s. No,
late
actually.
70s.
8.
And so back in those days, we weren't nearly as legislated and regulated and those Herman Cain words, legislation and regulation, as we are today. But you still had to probably get some fast tracking on the educational side. So who are some of the people that helped you in those early days on the fast track toward educating yourself so that you didn't wind up in any kind of trouble? Because, even then franchising had some regulation around it. Who were some of your early teachers and mentors and guides and Sherpas that helped you find your way?
Bill Rosenberg, Art Bartlett, David McKinnon, Fred DeLuca, even back to having the pleasure of meeting McDonald's King. before he passed away. And I was like a sponge, still am today. Even I'll go back even further than that. When I was in the financial planning and building franchises for Money Concepts International and the International Franchise Association, and at the same time I was helping Jack Nicklaus get out of near bankruptcy.
Wow.
He had overextended himself, and I worked with Chuck Perry, who was with one of the major bankers, and we went out and put together 10 deals at $500,000 guaranteed for 10 years and created a $50 million unit. And from that, it just kept going on, and all of a sudden, that's back when we used a lot of direct mail, and there wasn't the internet, and all of our presentations were done with an overhead and transparencies. You probably all remember that at some point.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And go in and run a discovery day, and the intent of a discovery day started teaching people what to do at shows. Most people at the shows just wanted to have people to fill out cards, and we would qualify them. We'd pull them over and take another booth right next to the other one with, back to Don Palladino, with many of the old presidents of the IFA, and actually the IFA put me as in charge of the exhibitor committee for the IFA for nearly 4 years.
But you've definitely seen some changes for certain. And it's interesting, how you brought Discovery Day to franchising, and of course, Discovery Day is very prominent throughout franchising to this day. But what you've seen also is, so many changes. We were talking with Tom Cortese, the CEO of MFE Expos, the producer of Franchise Expo South, amongst other shows. He was saying, back in the day they did 80 shows a year, and now they're doing just a handful of shows. And of course, the introduction of the internet, franchise brokers, a lot of changes have taken place. But Jerry, as I was listening to you, and you were mentioning these iconic names, you mentioned Rosenberg, you mentioned Fred DeLuca, who sadly passed away this past year, amongst others, just truly iconic individuals, true entrepreneurs, and of course also you spent some time as a personal consultant with Anthony A. Martino, founder of MAACO, and of course of MAACO as well. What was different?
And Goddard schools.
Sure, right, that's right, and the Goddard schools. So what was different about those type of iconic entrepreneurs when you compare them to the entrepreneurs in so many different franchise organizations today?
The older people that were more mature, we kept saying you got to go back to the basics. Learn to listen to people. Find out what's more important to them, and once you make a friend, they will open their life up. And when you know more about their life, their goals and dreams, and my gosh, it had to be almost a form of profiling then that we didn't even know what the word meant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And being able to, and what I found with most top salespeople in the country today, and Stan knows I'm working on a project with Rebecca and Steve Olson. Most top salespeople think it's an 8-to-5 job today. Well, especially the millennials, it's not.
Yeah.
They don't want to be called. They want to talk to you either on Skype, text, and they want to say, when can I take you? And when I find out the times you have to talk to them, late at night, depending on which coast you are, they don't care. And then they want to talk about what's important to them, their goals and their dreams and their family. And they're very focused, and they make decisions quickly. And probably from that habit, is why, and you probably know, and Stan knows, I pretty much still work 7 days a week.
I tell people in the class that Rebecca and I did in Houston, I shared with the audience how if they were looking to replace a job by becoming a franchisee, they were probably at the wrong meeting. And whether you're a Zor or a Z, I think there's a work ethic in our business, or even as a consultant from the outside looking in, there's a work ethic in franchising that's so different. And I told the audience that if this was more like having another child. In the beginning, you're going to have to be there for that baby all the time and have to nurture it and take care of it morning, noon, and night. And the hope is that sometime along the way, that baby of yours starts growing up and can be a little bit more independent and take care of itself and a little less demanding on you, and that ultimately the day will come where, just like we hope with our kids, that the business will then stand up on its own two legs and ultimately take care of us. In franchising,
one of the greatest experiences I had, and hopefully you all remember Greg Musello.
Sure.
Yes.
It's one of the few businesses that Fred DeLuca ever invested in. And when I met Greg, I was with Don Palladino in New Orleans at a Don Palladino show. And very bright, him and his partner, CPAs, very smart, very entrepreneurial, had an idea. And I kept watching them give away $10 and $20 brochures back then, and no way to follow up. So on weekends, I would fly up to Cleveland, Ohio. Greg will tell you this story. I wrote their operations manuals, and I didn't even know what an operations manual was. I just figured it had to be something simple that you could teach people. And it would be definitely different than what I do today. And ran their first discovery days. In 9 months, we awarded or granted 75 franchises.
And that was still pro forma back then, right?
Yeah, and all they are really is they're a facilitator that gang prints and do everything, but they find people in the thing that don't have jobs that want to stay in that business. And they're independent, and Greg has been putting on seminars that are unbelievable. I've been watching them on Facebook, and I talk to Greg regularly. But anyway, he'll tell you I changed his life.
Interesting. I didn't know Fred was an investor in that business. Fred had tried so many other different franchise concepts that all never seemed to lift.
Oh yeah, and everything from other fast foods to even We Care Hair. Remember that?
Yep,
sure do.
I remember We Care Hair. Yep.
And then he had the other one, what it was, a chicken thing. Chicken Joe
Jerry, back
Go ahead.
Back then, it seemed like there was a great level of professionalism. And allow me to explain. As you talked about just now about salespeople, it's not a 9-to-5 job, and it's certainly not a 5-day-a-week job. And I remember back in the day when there were 70 or 80 trade shows, the revered individuals for franchise brands were the lead franchise salespeople. They not only performed the part, but they dressed the part. I mean, they truly looked like professionals, like somebody to me that I would invest my money with. And certainly they followed up. And they had the ability to close. And then, of course, they were right back on the road again and again and again and again. And yet, the study that you were talking about, the project you were talking about with Rebecca and Steve Olson, I've done some talking with myself with Steve last week. We spent a couple hours on the phone talking about it. And we still chuckle about how many franchise salespeople don't even return phone call number one. And it's just the tolerance of that just blows me away.
It is embarrassing. It is absolutely embarrassing. And probably you both know my background, Stan. You know it intimately because we were in another industry together, and we didn't know at the time. That was in the optical industry. And all of a sudden, we know people forever, and I still get calls from franchisees with Sterling Optical and Sight for Sore Eyes with their families saying, thank you. Hey, I got this on my mind. What can I do? I do the same thing with MAACO franchises. They still call me.
You've collected people better than anyone I know, Jerry, and I mean, it's just impossible for me to drop a name that isn't already in your first tier of LinkedIn connections. They may be new to me, but when I
well, you and I knew Heigl right out of the bat, didn't we, brother?
Absolutely. Hey, speaking of names that everybody's heard of and knows, there's another one. You've already dropped the Jack Nicholson. What about the Bill Marriott connection? Tell us about that.
Well, I was living in Washington, D.C., and building shoe stores. I built 30 of the most successful shoe stores back when I was 22 years old in the Washington, D.C. area, all high-end. I was selling shoes to the Auchincloss family, purses. I'm talking about then, $10,000 and $20,000 tickets. You know my daughter, Stan, very well.
Yeah, I do.
She's got the last check that John F. Kennedy ever personally signed before he went in as a president. And it just, I went over, I was biting my nails a lot then, and over, it was the first Marriott hotel called Key Bridge. And I was told to go over there, and that's where I could stop biting my nails, get a manicure, and they'd put clear nail polish on, and you wouldn't bite them. Well, guess who was sitting next to me in the chair? Jay Willard. And he and I just got to talking, and I started laughing. He was ranting on. He's a good LDS. So I can't believe all these people want me to put bars and liquor in my hotels. And sure enough, I got a call from a headhunter. Have no idea why. I'm trying to remember who the headhunter was. I could tell you. It was Korn Ferry. Told you I'd remember it.
Yeah, I knew you would.
And they called and they said, Bill Marriott is looking for someone to take over as president of all their franchise brands. I said, well, I don't know that I'd qualify. They said, no, he got your name through a lot of people, and he'd like to talk to you. So I didn't have to go through the HR department or anything. So all of a sudden, his secretary, and still today is Phyllis, got me on the phone with Bill, and we started talking. He said, why don't you come in for an interview? And I said, Bill, let me go back to when I knew your dad. He said, how'd you know my dad? So I told him the story, and he said, oh, my God, you did know him. And that's when they owned Pappy Parker's, Hot Shops, Roy Rogers. And I would laugh about the store, and he said, you're absolutely right, that was my dad. So we became very close, and he tried to hire me, and I just said, Bill, you know what? Knowing your father and knowing your family and knowing where you are, I don't think I can come into that family and make the changes I want to make, and so I'm not going to take a job that I can fail in. From that, we just became great friends and kept in touch. When I'd go into the public affairs in D.C., if he was in town, he would always meet me outside of the J.W. Marriott. And we would go somewhere and have a cup of coffee because he's the type, if he goes in there, everybody knows him, and he won't get out of there for 8 or 10 hours.
Wow.
And then when, actually, I think, well, I know, Paul, you experienced it, and so did Stan. When we go down to Lauderdale, where TS held their conventions, if there was nothing going on and Bill's family wasn't there, I stayed in the suite. That was his family's, and you all had a private cabana and everything.
Yeah, that suite would be more like like the floor of an office building somewhere. It's so big.
Yeah.
Then going back to your area, when they opened the Marriott Marquis stand, which is one of their big flagships at the time, I checked in, and I was one of the earlier members of the Marriott Rewards program. And I checked in. I got called over by the manager and said, Mr. Marriott saw that you're checking in. He wants you to have the presidential suite, just where Clinton and a number of other people stayed. And I went up in this suite, and I thought, my God, I was living in a house.
Yeah.
Grand piano and everything. So I slept on my one side of the bed, didn't mess anything up. And I thought, boy, this is very impressive.
And anybody listening to our podcast today that wondered what we were talking about in terms of memories and how vivid those memories are when Jerry's talking about things that happened so many years ago in such finite detail as though it were just yesterday. This is Franchise Today, everybody. I'm Stan Friedman, along with Paul Segreto, and we're speaking today with the mayor of franchising, the iconic Jerry Darnell. Franchise Today is brought to you by Paul Segreto's Franchise Foundry, a business accelerator that helps early-stage franchise systems stand up and emerging franchise brands grow up as they scale their businesses for sustainable growth. Franchise Today is also brought to you by FRM Solutions, where we offer robust, out-of-the-box CRM and content management software solutions tailored specifically for franchising to assist with the management of relationships between franchisors and their prospective as well as existing franchisees. Jerry, if I asked you to just look back on your career and all the places that you've been, you've probably done the full Monty, being on the, well, I don't know if you've been a franchisee, but you've certainly been on the supplier side, and you've been on the finance side, and you've been representing franchisors for dozens of years. Where do you feel the greatest impact has been in franchising over the course of your career? Where have you made the biggest difference?
Actually, I think in development of new franchises. When I talked to Steve and Rebecca, I probably directly and indirectly, of all the places I've worked and done, probably have over 9,000 franchises or 10,000 personally that I've affected one way or the other.
That is a very large number.
It's huge. And Stan, you know from my optical background with Cohen's Fashion Optical and Sterling Optical, we bought them out of bankruptcy, refranchised them. I went on the road and settled 75 class action lawsuits, took the company private, took it public, and then wound up doing a lot of consulting work for the larger medical, and Medicine Shoppe was one of those, which is owned by Cardinal Healthcare. I spent 19 months there and took their stock from 8 to 32 and did a 3-for-2 split, and then we sold it to Cardinal Healthcare. So,
well, you've had your fingerprints on so many different projects, Jerry, from Main Street to Wall Street and back again. While I can't take any credit for Discovery Days or its creation or any of the early stage things that you've had the privilege of doing in your life, I can share some credit with others that are in our sphere of friends like Marty Greenbaum and a couple of other people who helped coax and encourage you actually into doing your own thing a few years ago and beginning Jerry Darnell Associates. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about that world that you're in and how you've brought all these years of practical experience together and to bear, and what it is you're doing today that might be of benefit to some in the audience to learn about, and how they and you might even get to know each other if they don't know you yet.
Well, I can do it in a simple way. I had spent a lot of time with other suppliers, Benetrends, Guidant, and had major impacts, and all of a sudden it didn't work out. I did not want to move to Seattle, and I got a call from two friends, one being Marty Greenbaum and Stan, saying, Jerry, this is what you need to do. So I had to start thinking about it, and I said, well, how am I going to make this work? And both of you have been there to coach me along the way, which I'm still a student and still love coaching. And from that is how I built Jerry Darnell Associates to work with such great companies as MFV, Clarity Voice. I could go on and on and on and on, and it's still coming out of the woodwork.
How are you helping companies today, Jerry? What is it you do that helps franchisors gain the clarity and push to the next level? Because you work more with I mean, I know you work with large as well as smaller companies, but you're all about advancing it for yardage, and whether they are emerging brands or legacy brands, I guess the one thing we all know about you is when you see something that someone needs to know, you're not going to be shy about telling them what they need to know. So I guess people that have a thin skin probably wouldn't do too well working with you. You might scare them away, but how do you do what you do? What is the magic? What is the secret sauce that you give to a franchisor that helps them advance the agenda from where they are before they've met you to where you take them once they've been introduced to you?
Usually it's an introduction by either a phone call. I get probably, as you know, Stan, probably nearly 40 to 50 inquiries off of LinkedIn a month from all over the world. And I go back to the same thing I did in granting a franchise. Say, look, I'd love to talk to you. I'll give you 30 minutes. I'm going to vet you, and I want you to vet me. And I want to make sure our goals align. And there's no amount of money that's going to buy me to do something I don't think the goals are going to align. And a lot of it's, understanding where they're coming from, how committed they are to it, where they are in the process. Part of it are companies that I'm not even going to mention names that went out and done stuff that it has to be totally redone. And then I say, this is how I can help you. And then I work with the key people I trust, like you on a CRM, like with many franchise attorneys that we're all close to, and people that write operations manuals and bring in the pros and help manage the process.
So, Jerry, we have, as our listenership on Franchise Today, 7 years now, a lot of, wannabe franchisors or emerging franchisors. And as we have found over the years, many are listening to this show as a way of educating themselves towards being the right fit franchisor. I actually had an experience with one that a year before he even got into franchising from a franchisor perspective, he was listening to our show and all the great deal of time, the likes of, Steve Greenbaum, Lee Play, Lane Fisher, so many dedicated their time for hundreds of shows. And it's why we've had, several 100,000 on-demand listens. But specifically to these young franchisors, please share with them, some of your wisdom as to what they should be doing getting started and how should they go about doing it.
Well, one thing is make sure they're well capitalized enough. Because you are a franchisor, you're not going to get rich quick overnight. And if you're not willing to keep investing back in your company, your people, your operations, your training, your education, to me, the franchisee is a partnership with the franchisor. And it's all about getting and keeping customers, and more importantly, having those customers to come back more and more often all the time than their competitors in light of their experiences. Customer satisfaction, I know you both preach that. The big thing is if I'm not the right fit, I'll refer them to somebody else. As I have with all of you.
Right.
And I'm not always the best match from somebody because probably one of my strengths is my biggest downfall, and I'm just very direct.
Right.
I don't guess anybody's ever noticed that, Jerry. Have you ever noticed that, Paul?
Nah, never.
You know what? That doesn't mean I won't be there to help them if they need to call me again.
Yep,
that's right. Absolutely. It's all business. I mean, you are all business, but in a personal kind of a way. And those who know you and really know you aren't shaken by how direct you can be. We actually have come to appreciate that over time. And when you hear something from you, you can take it to the bank because it is what it is. Whether it's right or wrong, it's what you believe, and you stand for those convictions in ways that not enough people do. Hey, Jerry, I just had a text message from somebody whose name you've dropped a couple of times in the course of this podcast today, and Rebecca Monet has asked me to ask you. how you possibly juggle so many projects and friendships and keep that mind and memory so keen.
I work on it all the time. I probably started out doing Jerry West's memory book. That's how I started building my memory. I keep my database up to night. I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a day, my time. Nobody bothered me. Bonnie is doing her thing. She's writing. And I continually update my database. And if you're all familiar with Facebook, if not, you should. Every 3 to 6 months, they change the way you communicate. I mean, you and I talked about it, Stan, and I've talked to 3 or 4 people. All of a sudden, people you thought you're getting stuff from, you're not anymore. And it's a combination of trying to stay on top of it and manage it. And to me, it's a learning curve for me, which I'm loving. I mean, I have to learn and learn and learn and learn. And you got a 66-year-old man that probably understands technology very well, and I had the chance of visiting with your good friend, Stan, and one you're mentoring is Sean. I mean, here's a guy that's a genius, and him and I sit down, and he goes, wow, and I'm going like, why are you saying wow? You're the one who knows it all.
Jerry's talking about a young man named Sean Goldsmith, who is a now 25-year-old professional who I met when he was a 16 or 17-year-old high school sophomore, and participating in a DECA entrepreneurship program, became the recipient of one of the IFA's Don DeBolt scholarships, and from those years to this very day, to this past weekend in Houston and upcoming at the IFA, this young man has held on to every connection he's ever been given a connection to. So I've been to Houston, Texas, I don't know how many times, Jerry, and I've known Doc Cohn for dozens of years, but I've never been to his house. And young little Sean Goldsmith, he spent the night having dinner with Scott Lair and Doc Cohn, and he's out there with all the luminaries. A very brilliant young man who has a long path ahead of him, the kind of young man that we all love to pay back by paying forward and assisting young professionals as they get into franchising.
And even Doc Cohen took him under his wing and mentoring him too.
Yep. But to the point that Rebecca made, you've learned how to sharpen your mind, and I get a lot of laughs from people who see me posting all the time about going to the gym. You go to a different kind of gym. You've kept your mind as sharp as a tack, and I'm going to throw it to Paul to introduce a series of questions that I think harken to where you were just going, Jerry, with things like Facebook. I mean, Paul, you are the social guru, and you and Deb Evans have been my digital divas for a long time. She's a diva, and you're just a kingpin. But here's Jerry, who is the only person I've known who, no matter how many times Facebook might change their rules or their algorithms or the way they do things to keep everybody honest and straight, Jerry Darnell is still the only person on the planet that somehow gets to like things that I'm thinking before I've even posted them, Paul. How does that work?
Yeah, that is true. But, Jerry, I do want to ask you a question, because it does revolve around Facebook and it does revolve around LinkedIn and the way people use it. And I know you do a lot with, young suppliers, especially coming in, and you introduce them to how to do business with franchise organizations. And of course, we see many, many times they jump onto, or individuals that haven't yet worked with you, jump onto Facebook and or LinkedIn, and immediately they're trying to sell something. They haven't even earned the right. It's like they walked into a rubber chicken event with a big sign on their head that says, I'm so-and-so, I'm selling this. So what advice do you give these young suppliers? Because you've worked with some that came out of nowhere and are, cornerstones in that supplier community. So obviously you've got a plan for them. They follow it, and they become very well respected. And others that didn't fall under your wing, I've seen them gone off to pasture, and where they were in franchising 4 years ago, they're no longer here. So what is the wisdom that you give them?
Well, part of it is, let me give you the number one rule before I'll work with any supplier. they've got to become a member of the IFA Supplier Forum, period.
Right.
If they don't do that, I'm not going to waste my time. That tells me they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. And with all due respect, the IFA is probably one of, and I say it proudly, they're one of the most incestuous groups. You just don't walk in and say, hey, I just showed up, I want your business.
Right.
They're not going to tolerate it. I wouldn't either. And from a supplier to me to earn the right to do business with franchisors, it could be 2 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got a lot of people they've entrusted all along the way, and I'm very close, as many of you know, and I'm not going to call names. I mean, I've got many of the top franchises, and they want to hire people, they'll call me. They'll say, Jerry, who should I talk to for this? Now, whether they do it or not, some they do, some they don't. Some of them wind up making great careers. I mean, I got introduced to Gary Yerke from my old friend, and many of your old friend is from David McKinnon. And I was blown away at what they're doing in the voice over IP. And I've become a big proponent of what Gary and his company is doing, and even the next levels it's going. And so they have to be committed to get in and get involved with the IFA to earn credibility with people that have been there and knows what it's like to live without a paycheck, to make sure their employees and their customers get satisfaction.
Excellent advice. You know,
and
the international, as we know, the International Franchise Association certainly does a lot for the franchise community.
Sure.
Probably a lot more than many members are even aware of. And of course, this time of the year and during September when we're all in Washington, D.C., you know, 2 big, you know, key events. And of course, all the things going on in the different, you know, states and at the federal level with the increase of the minimum wage, the NLRB rulings, et cetera, et cetera. It's not going to stop. So I think you're spot on that anybody new getting into franchising, you know, the first commitment they need to make is to join the association, and not only join it, but be active in the organization. Do your part.
You nailed it, Paul. You nailed it. And then I even go further than that. At some point, they need to get involved in FranPac. And I don't care if it's $1 a day, $365 a year to start out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've been to umpteen franchise conventions. We have our 56th annual IFA convention in San Antonio coming up in a few days. As much as it's old hat for you, it is a great reunion. You see a lot of people, but you're in touch with a lot of people throughout the year. What does Jerry Darnell look to gain from this year's event?
Probably mentoring a lot of people. I'll be going in on Thursday, actually, for meetings that are already set up, doing some pre-prep work, and getting prepared mentally. I do a lot of meditation. I look at the list, who's coming, who's not coming, who maybe I can help that I've met but they haven't moved off the dime, and not that they're even going to do business with me. I just say, what is your next step? How come you haven't moved in the last year or two? So I do a lot of that type of thing. I mean, I get in Thursday. I've got meetings Thursday night, Friday morning, Saturday when most of the people are arriving, and I'm just excited about. I go to learn more. Actually, I'm a student.
Well, when the student's ready, the teacher appears is the old adage. But you know, Jerry, you too have another side to your life that few people probably know about. I mean, we all go home to our city or suburban homes. You live on a horse farm in the middle of Kentucky. Tell us a little bit about that life, and you know, the friends like I've met through you guys. One that I know is listening right now is texting me, and he actually was threatening to call in. Is Pete Baldine? You guys have, well, Pete. I say you guys. I can't say that about you because you live on a horse farm. It's not your farm. Pete's working his horse farm and working his professional career as well. But you and Bonnie, it's Bonnie's farm, right? That's Bonnie's business. But tell us a little bit about the personal side of your life.
I do that for one reason. I let her take ownership. I help her in every way I can. Physically, I cannot do what I used to do. And it's been hard on both of us to learn that. But what I can do is important. And I do a lot of work to support her. And my God, she's written a book already. It's published. She's got book signings coming up. There's actually a potential of an off-Broadway that wants to take her book and make an off-Broadway. It's going into textbooks. And she keeps me going. She's the one, as you know, Stan. When my kidney shut down, thanks to the VA, she kept me alive.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it's just...
You never forget.
It's just an amazing thing to me, Jerry, the amount of energy that you put out and what a rock star role model you are for people that are half your age that can take a lesson from the kind of energy, positive energy, that you put forth in physical energy, that you put forth in pushing the agenda of franchising forward on so many different fronts.
And you know, you're funny, with Pete Baldine, a lot of times he and I don't even talk about franchising. We talk about, hey, where to buy it, how to get it for the best price.
Bourbon?
Bourbon,
good.
yeah.
Horses?
Without a doubt.
Well, Paul, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, definitely. You know, Jerry, you mentioned that your wife Bonnie wrote a book. Why don't you tell our listening audience the name of the book so that they have an opportunity to go buy it?
It's a novel about bipolar, and part of the things in that is stuff that she's experienced with people, and it's a big book. People that have read it, including John Hayes, has written stuff for her, and many other people. And they're blown away by what she's done. I'm impressed because I'm not a writer. I'm a bullet person. You know that, Stan.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The book, Paul, is called Uglier. And for those that want to find it on Amazon or elsewhere, the author is Bonnie Palis, P-A-L-I-S. The other half of the life of Jerry Darnell.
The better half.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to go there, but I should have, right?
Yeah, you talk. If I'm not around, you talk to her as much as I do.
That's
true. That is true.
Well, you know, Jerry, it's been a long time coming, and we're grateful and honored to have you on the show today, and especially with such a health scare last year. And it's great to have you back, and it seems, you know, without looking back, and it seems like you're probably more on top of your game than any other time before. And certainly many look up to you and will continue to look up to you, and rightly so. And we're glad to have you as friends. That's for sure.
Well, I feel very honored to be blessed to be on your show. It's been a learning experience to me, and just going back and talking about things that, you know, I had to pull back down to the bottom to reach out. But anyway, it's good. And I look forward to being with all of you in San Antonio.
It's a day and a half away for most of us, and for you, I guess you're in tomorrow getting everything set up for us, right, Jerry?
I'm heading down to meet with an old friend of yours and mine tonight, Stan, with Captain D's.
Very nice.
You know who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with a number of organizations that you've been involved. And I've got an early flight tomorrow heading out to San Antonio, and we get in the afternoon, and already arranged for a little mobile help called a scooter. And I'm rocking. I'm getting plenty of sleep. The other thing Stan knows, I haven't had a cigarette since last May.
Yep, that's remarkable.
And that's remarkable. I'm smoking 3 packs a day.
Well, here's to the next 66 years, Jerry.
Yes.
I will toast you guys to that there with a good vodka or a good wine.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
You know, the one thing, Jerry, since you did stop smoking, we do have to go around looking for you now, where we used to be able to find you right outside the hotel door, usually with my drum running back with In-N-Out Burger or something like that. So, but no.
Or you heard me going down the aisles coughing.
I heard.
Gentlemen, I thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Looking forward to it as well, Jerry. See you.
Thanks for being our guest, Jerry. Appreciate it.
I love you guys, appreciate you, and look forward to sharing a great few days with you.
Same here. Well, Stan, another great show. I don't know if you realize this, Stan, but when we hit next week's show with Anthony Owen, Franchise Today, with you as my co-host, we'll be back on the air 6 months already. 6 months. We've been grinding.
I find that very hard to believe, Paul. It's like everything else that's been moving at the speed of light. The pace this year, Jerry's a testament to it. I mean, if you're not moving forward at the speed of light, then you're going backward, and none of us are here to do that. So we press on. I can't believe 6 months is already I can't believe that half the year is already over.
Yeah.
That we've been at it. We've been at it for 6 months. It's
amazing, and we've had some unbelievable guests, none other than Jerry Darnell today, Robert Crisante, Tom Portese, Shelley Sun, Catherine Monson, Pete Baldini. I mean, the list is on and on. And you're going to see some of these people on the stage this weekend at the IFA with Catherine Monson giving the keynote, Shelley Sun coming up behind Aziz Hashim as next year's chairperson of the IFA, and we're just honored to have all of them as friends and colleagues in this great thing we call franchising, Stan.
So true, Paul. And you know, the one thread that drives through every one of those names is the mission for what we've set out to do these past 6 months, and that's just bring the voices of those that put the word sustainable in front of growth in whatever part of the equation is the part that they fit into in franchising, be they suppliers, be they like Paul Rocchio and Association or Robert Crisante, suppliers, franchisees, or franchisors, whichever side of that three-legged stool is the side you claim. Sustainable growth is what this program is about, and sharing stories, sharing information with the audience that pertains to sustainable growth is what Franchise Today is here to deliver.
Absolutely. Anyway, until next week, my name is Paul Segreto, wishing you the best, the very best, as I said, in this great thing we call franchising. Franchise Today is out.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research the new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.